When diplomacy dies, the Stellar Federation's greatest mistake, the Stellar Federation had stood for 8,000 years as a beacon of peace among the stars. 47 species called it home, from the wise crystal beings of Thyros Prime to the gentle floating jellies of the nebula rings. Each species brought something unique to the Great Alliance. The Velrani contributed their diplomatic wisdom, the Zephyrians their advanced technology, and the Morgathians their incredible mathematical minds that kept trade flowing smoothly across 1,000 worlds. For 8 millennia, conflicts were resolved through careful negotiation, economic pressure, and when absolutely necessary, limited police actions carried out by volunteer forces from multiple species. War, as the ancient texts described it, was considered a relic of primitive times. The Federation had evolved beyond such crude measures. Then the humans arrived, the curious newcomers 50 years ago. A small fleet of human ships had stumbled into Federation space, their primitive faster-than-light drives sputtering and failing. The first contact protocols went smoothly. The humans seemed grateful for rescue, eager to learn, and surprisingly adaptable. They asked endless questions about everything from Federation law to alien cuisine. Their representatives were polite, their traders honest, and their explorers respectfully curious about new worlds and cultures. Ambassador Phylos of the Velrani still remembered his first meeting with the human delegation. They had seemed so young as a species, so enthusiastic about joining the galactic community. "We want to contribute," their lead diplomat had said with genuine warmth. "We want to be part of something greater than ourselves." The Federation Council had debated humanity's membership for only 3 cycles before approving it unanimously. The humans established colonies on 17 worlds, built trade stations throughout their assigned sectors, and sent their brightest minds to Federation universities. They seemed to integrate perfectly into the peaceful order that had lasted so long. What the Federation didn't realize was that humans had been very careful about what's of their history they shared. The Korthak challenge. The trouble began with the Korthak Empire, a reptilian species from the galaxy's outer rim. They had never joined the Federation, preferring their rigid military hierarchy and warrior culture. For generations, they had remained within their borders, occasionally testing Federation resolve with minor incursions that were quickly resolved through standard diplomatic channels. General Vex Star, the Korthak's supreme military commander, had grown frustrated with what he saw as Federation weakness. Their response to every Korthak expansion was the same: economic sanctions, diplomatic protests, and strongly worded resolutions. The other species seemed incapable of anything resembling real strength. The Korthak military philosophy was simple: strength commanded respect, and weakness invited conquest. They had built their empire by conquering dozens of primitive worlds, enslaving populations, and turning entire planets into military production centers. The Federation's peaceful methods struck them as not just naive, but pathetic. Vexstar decided it was time to test exactly how committed the Federation was to their peaceful ideals. The first moves to Korthak began with small provocations. They seized 3 Federation trading posts in disputed space, claiming ancient territorial rights. The Federation responded predictably with diplomatic protests and trade restrictions. The Korthak ignored them. Next, they blockaded 2 Federation worlds, demanding tribute for safe passage through Korthak space. The Federation offered negotiations. The Korthak demanded surrender. Ambassador Thylos found himself shuttling between Federation worlds, trying to build consensus for stronger action. But each species had their own concerns. The Zephyrians worried about trade disruptions. The Morgathians calculated that the economic costs of military action outweighed the benefits. The crystal beings of Thyros Prime meditated on peaceful solutions that might take decades to implement. The humans watched these debates with growing frustration. Their representative, Admiral Sarah Chun-Wei, had been surprisingly quiet during the discussions. She had served in something called the Earth Defense Force before becoming a diplomat, though she rarely spoke about those experiences. "What would your people do?" Thylos had asked her during one particularly heated council session. Shun Wei had looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her years. "We would have stopped this before it started," she said quietly. "But we're trying to do things your way." The point of no return, a moment that changed everything, happened on a Tuesday by Earth's calendar. The research station orbiting New Brisbane, a peaceful human colony world, was conducting xenobiology studies in partnership with 3 other Federation species. The station housed 2,000 researchers and their families, including children, who attended the station's small school. The Korthik fleet appeared without warning. They demanded the station's surrender and the evacuation of all non-human personnel. When the station commander tried to negotiate, offering to discuss any Korthik concerns through proper diplomatic channels, General Vexstar himself responded, "We do not negotiate with inferior species." His transmission was broadcast across Federation networks. "You have 30 minutes to surrender, or we will demonstrate Korthik strength." The station commander was Dr. Elena Martinez, a xenobiologist, who had dedicated her life to studying peaceful interspecies cooperation. She had a 6-year-old daughter named Lisa aboard the station. With calm professionalism, she transmitted a message to Earth and the Federation Council. "This is New Brisbane Research Station. We are under attack by Korthik forces. We are non-combatants, conducting peaceful research. We request immediate assistance." The Federation response came within minutes. "Emergency diplomatic protocols activated. Do not resist. Comply with all demands. Help is being negotiated." Dr. Martinez looked around at her diverse crew of researchers, at the alien colleagues who had become friends, at the human children playing in the station's gardens. She made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "No," she transmitted, "to the Korthik fleet. We are scientists. We are peaceful. But we will not surrender to bullies." Vexstar's response was swift and brutal. The Korthik fleet opened fire with everything they had. The message the research station's shields lasted 18 minutes. The emergency pods launched before the final explosion, but Korthik fighters hunted them down methodically. By the end of the day, 2,000 human civilians were dead, along with 47 researchers from other Federation species who had refused to abandon their human colleagues. The Federation Council met in emergency session. Species after species condemned the attack, promised investigations, and proposed new rounds of diplomatic initiatives. The Korthik response was broadcast live across the galaxy. "Weakness invites attack. The Federation is weak. We will take what we wish." Then Admiral Shun Wei requested permission to address the council. She stood at the podium where she had delivered so many careful diplomatic speeches over the years. But something had changed in her demeanor. The polite diplomatic mask was gone, replaced by something that made even veteran council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Dr. Elena Martinez was my daughter," she said quietly. "Lisa Martinez was my granddaughter. She was 6 years old." The silence in the council chamber was absolute. "For 50 years, we have tried to be the species you wanted us to be. We studied your laws, adopted your customs, embraced your peaceful methods. We believed that civilization meant putting aside the tools of war." She paused, looking directly at each species representative in turn. "We were wrong." Shun Wei activated a holographic display that showed Earth and the human colonies. Red indicators began appearing throughout human space, thousands of them. "These are the ships, stations, and installations you've never seen. The parts of human civilization we kept hidden because we thought they had no place in your peaceful galaxy." The scale was staggering. The Federation had thought they knew the extent of human space capabilities. They had been observing less than 10% of it. "We tried your way for 50 years, Chun-Wei continued. "Now we'll show you ours." General Vex-Tar wanted to see strength. He's about to learn what that word really means. She stepped down from the podium and walked toward the chamber's exit. At the doorway, she turned back one final time. "Don't try to stop us. And don't get in our way." The silence before the storming, the days that followed, human diplomatic missions across the galaxy went silent. Trade ships returned to port and stayed there. Human colonies activated defense grids that the Federation didn't know existed. The cheerful, curious humans who had integrated so well into galactic society seemed to vanish overnight, replaced by something altogether different. Ambassador Thylos tried repeatedly to contact human leadership, but received only automated responses. All diplomatic communications are suspended pending resolution of the new Brisbane incident. The Korthik, emboldened by their success and the Federation's predictable weakness, began mobilizing their full fleet. Intelligence reports suggested they were planning to seize a dozen Federation worlds simultaneously, forcing a complete capitulation. But strange reports began filtering in from Korthik space. Scout ships disappeared without trace. Communication. Relays went offline for brief periods before resuming normal function. Korthik military commanders reported feeling watched even in their most secure facilities. General Vex-Tar dismissed these reports as paranoid fantasies. The humans were traders and researchers, not warriors. What could they possibly do against the might of the Korthik Empire? He was about to find out. On the Federation's emergency networks, a single message appeared simultaneously on every channel, broadcast in every language. For Dr. Elena Martinez and Lessa Martinez, age 6. For the 47 scientists who died. With them. For everyone who believed civilization meant something. The reckoning begins now. It was signed with a simple identifier. Earth remembers. Asterisk, when monsters wake they hunt, begins the first sign that everything had changed, came from the outer Korthik systems. 3 military stations, each protecting major supply routes, went dark within the same hour. Not destroyed dark. Their automated distress beacons continued transmitting, but no one answered when ships arrived to investigate. When Korthik rescue fleets reached the stations, they found scenes that defied understanding. The stations were intact, their life. Support systems functioning normally. But every single Korthik aboard was gone. Not dead, not captured, simply gone. The only trace left behind was a message written in perfect Korthik script on each station's main display. Elena Martinez, xenobiologist. Lisa Martinez, age 6. General Vex-Tar received these reports with growing unease, but he refused to show weakness to his subordinates. "Humans are cowards," he declared during his daily military briefing. "They resort to tricks because they lack the strength for honest battle." But the tricks, as he called them, continued. Korthik supply convoys began disappearing between worlds. Entire fleets would lose contact for hours, only to reappear with no memory of what had happened during the blackout periods. When they checked their cargo holds, they found personal items mixed in with military supplies, children's toys, family photographs, research notes written in human handwriting, always accompanied by names and ages of the new Brisbane victims. Psychological effect on Korthik forces was devastating. These were warriors bred for straightforward combat, trained to face enemies they could see and fight. The humans were doing something entirely different. They were making the Korthik afraid of the dark. The nature of human war ambassador Thylos had spent his long life studying warfare throughout galactic history. The Vilrani archives contain detailed records of every major conflict in Federation. Space over the past 8,000 years. But nothing had prepared him for what the humans were doing. Traditional warfare, even among the most aggressive species, followed certain patterns. Fleets met in open space, armies clashed on planetary surfaces, and objectives were seized through superior force or strategy. There were rules, conventions, and predictable phases to any conflict. The humans followed none of these patterns. Instead of massing fleets for grand battles, they seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Korthic commanders reported seeing human ships in impossible locations, using technology that Federation sensors couldn't explain. When Korthic forces moved to engage, the humans simply weren't there anymore. But the real horror wasn't in what the humans were doing. It was in how they were doing it. Every human attack was preceded by a transmission. Not a demand for surrender or a military threat, but something much more unsettling, a memorial. The names and faces of every victim from New Brisbane read aloud in careful, respectful tones. Dr. Elena Martinez, who had discovered 3 new forms of crystalline life. Her husband, Dr. James Martinez, who taught alien children about Earth's oceans. Lisa Martinez, age 6, who wanted to be a xenobiologist like her grandmother. 40-7 names in total, read by different human voices before each strike. The same names, the same faces, the same quiet dignity. As if the humans were explaining, with infinite patience, exactly why each Korthic installation was about to cease existing. The Watcher's General, Vextar, had not become supreme military commander through cowardice, but the reports from his field. Commanders were beginning to affect even his iron confidence. The humans weren't just attacking military targets, they were watching everything. Korthic officers reported finding human technology in their personal quarters, devices that had somehow bypassed every security system in the Empire. Not weapons or bombs, but observation equipment. Cameras, listening devices, and strange scanners that seemed designed to study Korthic biology and psychology. The message was clear. We know where you sleep, what you eat, how you think. We've been watching you longer than you realize. When Vextar ordered a complete security sweep of his flagship, the teams found 47 separate monitoring devices hidden throughout the ship. Each was accompanied by a small holographic projector displaying the image of one New Brisbane victim. The device in his private quarters showed Lisa Martinez, age 6, smiling as she held up a drawing of what appeared to be a Korthic and a human child playing together. The fleet that shouldn't exist 3 weeks after the attacks began. Korthic long-range sensors finally detected what they had been looking for. A human fleet. Not the small exploration vessels and trading ships they were familiar with, but massive warships unlike anything in the Federation databases. The fleet consisted of vessels that seemed to blend organic curves with crystalline structures, as if grown rather than built. Their energy signatures were unlike anything Korthic scientists had ever recorded. Most unsettling of all, the ships moved in perfect coordination, without any detectable communication between them. Vextar ordered his entire battle fleet to intercept them. This was his chance to face the humans in honest combat, to show the galaxy that Korthic strength could overcome any enemy. The 2 fleets met in the space between star systems, far from any inhabited worlds. The Korthic formation was textbook. Perfect. Heavy cruisers in the center, fast attack ships on the flanks, support vessels protected in the rear. They had every advantage in numbers and firepower. The human fleet simply stopped and waited. "This is General Vextar of the Korthic Empire," he broadcast to the human ships. "You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of your actions." The response came from Admiral Chun Wei herself, her image appearing on screens throughout. The Korthic fleet. But she looked different from the diplomat who had addressed the Federation Council. This version of her wore a uniform that seemed to absorb light, and her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences no peaceful species could imagine. "General Vextar," she said quietly, "I want you to understand something. "We didn't come here to fight you. We came here to end you." The mathematics of extinction. What happened next would be studied by military strategists across the galaxy for generations to come, though few would truly understand it. The human ships didn't open fire. Instead, they did something that Federation science had deemed impossible. They began to alter the fundamental properties of space itself around the Korthic fleet. Gravity waves rippled outward from the human vessels, creating pockets of distorted space-time that twisted Korthic ships like metal sculptures. Energy weapons that should have traveled in straight lines curved back on themselves. The Korthic fleet found their own firepower being redirected at their own ships. But even more terrifying than the technology was the precision. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Korthic fleet. They were disabling specific systems on specific ships. In a calculated sequence, weapons offline first, and engines, then life support to non-essential areas. Each ship was methodically reduced to a floating prison, while its crew remained alive to watch. Within an hour, the entire Korthic battle fleet was helpless. Not a single human ship had been damaged. Admiral Chunwei's voice echoed through every disabled Korthic vessel. "You wanted to see strength, General. This is what it looks like when a species that conquered its own world decides to protect what it loves." The truth about humanity, as Korthic rescue ships arrived to collect the survivors of their shattered fleet, Ambassador Thylos finally received the communication he had been requesting for weeks. Admiral Chunwei agreed to meet with him on neutral ground, a small Federation station in the Centauri system. When she arrived, Thylos was struck by how much she had changed. The friendly diplomat was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself with the confidence of absolute certainty. This was not someone who hoped to win. This was someone who had already won and was simply waiting for her enemies to realize it. "You want to know what we are," she said before Thylos could speak. "All of these years in the Federation, and you never really asked about our history." She activated a holographic display that showed a blue-green world, Earth, but the images that followed were unlike anything in the Federation's cultural databases. Cities burning under atomic fire, massive armies clashing across frozen landscapes, oceans filled with naval battles that raged for years, millions of soldiers fighting and dying in trenches that stretched across entire continents. "We call it World War II," Chunwei said quietly. "It lasted 6 years and killed 60 million people. We've had dozens of conflicts like it throughout our history. We've fought with rocks and clubs, swords and shields, gunpowder and steel, atomic weapons and orbital platforms. We've been at war with something or someone for most of our recorded history." The images continued. Humans in environmental suits fighting in the vacuum of space, massive space battles around Earth's moon, colonies fighting for independence from their home world. "We didn't join the Federation because we were peaceful," she continued. "We joined because we were tired of fighting ourselves." Thylos felt something cold settling in his stomach. "How many of you know how to fight?" "All of us," Chunwei replied. "Every human child learns military history and basic combat skills. We call it never again education. We swore we would never be victims, never be helpless, never let those we love be hurt by those who mistake kindness for weakness." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed human colonies throughout Federation space. Each one was revealed to have extensive defensive installations, hidden military production facilities, and populations trained in warfare. "We've been building this for 50 years, hoping we'd never need it. The Federation gave us something we'd never had before. Peace. We were grateful for it. But we never forgot who we really are." The choice General Vexstar found himself in an impossible position. His entire military strategy had been based on the assumption that the Federation species were weak, that they would collapse when faced with real strength. But the humans had revealed themselves to be not just strong, but something far more dangerous, experienced. The Korthek Empire's greatest victories had been against primitive worlds with limited technology and no military experience. They had never faced an enemy that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. Now Korthek space was infiltrated by human observers. Their fleets were hiding throughout the galaxy, and their leaders were making it clear that the Empire's very existence was in question. Vexstar received a final transmission from Admiral Chun Wei, broadcast simultaneously to every Korthek world. General, your people have a choice. You can end this war by surrendering unconditionally and submitting to Federation, justice for the murder of 47 innocent beings. Or you can continue fighting, and we will show you what total war means to a species that has practiced it for 10,000 years. The holographic display showed Korthek Prime, the Empire's capital world. Surrounding it, barely visible against the darkness of space, were hundreds of human ships. They had been there for days, watching, waiting. You have 24 hours to decide, Chen Wei concluded. Choose wisely. We've grown fond of peace, but we've never forgotten war. The new understanding the Korthek Empire surrendered 18 hours later. General Vexstar himself traveled to Federation space to personally deliver the terms of capitulation and to face trial for war crimes. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, ensuring that every species witnessed the moment. But what struck observers most was not the Korthek defeat. It was Admiral Chen Wei's behavior during the surrender. She accepted Vexstar's submission with the same quiet dignity she had shown during diplomatic negotiations. There was no triumph, no celebration of victory, just a tired woman who had done what was necessary to protect those she cared about. War is not a celebration, she said during her address to the Federation Council. It's a failure of everything civilized beings should aspire to. We fought not because we wanted to, but because someone made it necessary. In the months that followed, the Federation's understanding of humanity underwent a complete transformation. The cheerful traders and curious scientists were still there, but now everyone knew what lay beneath that peaceful surface. The humans had chosen to be peaceful, but they had never stopped being dangerous. Other aggressive species that had been watching the Korthek situation quietly returned to their own territories. The message was clear. The Federation was no longer defenseless, and humans would respond to threats against innocent people with overwhelming force. Ambassador Thylos found himself serving as the Federation's primary liaison with human military forces, a position he had never expected to need. During one of their regular meetings, he asked Admiral Chen Wei a question that had been troubling him. Do you regret what you had to do? Chen Wei looked out at the stars visible through the station's observation deck. I regret that it was necessary, she said finally. But I don't regret protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. That's what civilization means to us, not the absence of the capacity for violence, but the choice to use that capacity only when innocence is threatened. She turned back to Thylos with a slight smile, the first genuine one he had seen from her in months. Besides, now everyone knows, and that means we might never have to do it again. Why every species dreads the day humans go to war in the years. That followed. The story of the Korthek War became legend throughout the galaxy. It wasn't just the human victory that impressed other species. It was the method. The humans had demonstrated that they possessed not just overwhelming military capability, but the wisdom to use it with restraint and the discipline to return to peace when the threat ended. But the real lesson wasn't about human strength. It was about human memory. Other species might forgive attacks on their people, might accept losses as the price of maintaining peaceful relations. Humans remembered every name, every face, every life lost to aggression. They carried those memories not as burdens, but as sacred trusts. And when someone threatened those they had sworn to protect, that memory became a weapon more devastating than any technology. The Federation remained peaceful, but it was no longer naive. Every species now understood that peace was not weakness, and that some things were worth fighting for. The humans had taught them that civilization wasn't about avoiding violence. It was about knowing when violence was necessary, and having the strength to act when that moment came. And somewhere in the darkness, between the stars, human ships continued their patient watch, invisible guardians of a peace they had helped to secure. They hoped never to fight again, but every species in the galaxy knew the truth. When humans go to war, they don't fight for victory. They fight for memory. And that makes them the most dangerous warriors the galaxy has ever known.